Hi there folks, my name's NovaWing24 and welcome to another little Microsoft Flight Simulator product review for the review of is it a bird, is it a plane, is it a car? I'm not sure, but it is the AeroMobile 3.0 by LivToAir. Now, not going to lie, this is definitely not my regular scene, and I was more than a little incredulous when I saw this craft was going to be released. I thought, okay, is this a bit of a flight of fancy? Is this something fictional? Is this a April Fool's joke? But did a bit of digging around, thanks to the developer pointed some stuff out to me, and I did a bit of digging around, some bit of research, and this is an actual flying car. This thing actually existed and actually flew. Sadly, it also may or may not have crashed, but it did actually fly, and the company still exists. AeroMobile still exists, and in fact, they are planning the next generation of flying cars. So. I'm not going to lie, I approached this add-on with more than a little skepticism when LivToAir approached me to take a look at this for you guys. So, but before we go any further, I do want to say a huge shout out, a huge thank you to the team at LivToAir for providing me with a review copy of this aircraft and getting me more than somewhat fascinated about this idea that this idea isn't just the realm of science fiction anymore or something that's really super clunky and not actually practical. This is actually kind of interesting. So anyway, with that kind of long-winded introduction out of the way, we are going to go through here and I'm going to have a bit of a review of this craft today, and we're going to go through, we're going to put it through its test paces. I'm about to say we're going to put it through a test flight, and I suppose not only a test flight but maybe a test drive as well, which is going to be kind of interesting. But we're doing our standard review process here. We'll be going through and we'll be having a look at the exterior model, and then we'll go through a full startup sequence. We'll go through for a test flight, then probably a test drive, and then we'll round out with our final thoughts and go through some of the cool stuff of this add-on here. So anyway, all right. So onwards to the initial thoughts of the external 3D model. So the and again, like I saw this and was like, is this actually real? Is this flight of fancy? Is this a lot of creative license? And the research that I did says that no, this is a pretty accurate model for this aircraft. It is powered by a Rotax 912 engine, and it has two modes. It has driving and flying. Currently, we see the craft in its driving configuration. And it is kind of cool, the fact that the developer actually gives us the option to be able to, sort of transform between the two different modes to actually do that. Now, I'm not sure how that goes between how it looks actually in the real thing, because I couldn't find a lot of that. There's quite a few videos on the flight test component, but not much on the driving component. But still, it is, as I said, but sticking with the model, it looks like what it says on the tin, and the developer's done a quite decent amount of detail on here. Part of me wants to say that the paint is a little reflective, a little too reflective, but again, consulting the images that I could find from when it was unveiled at a couple of trade shows and from the test flights, it's basically, it is correct. It covers everything off. In fact, I'll get into that a bit more once we get into the cockpit as well. Now, this aircraft is basically essentially it's designed for the uber wealthy who want to be able to, for basically anybody who'd buy a Bugatti is basically the target market for this one. So it has a fully electrically operated wing fold mechanism that also, that when it's folded like this, folds essentially and sits right above the engine. So the engine is actually modeled in here as well. So we've got our Rotax 912 in here. I must admit that I feel in some ways that engine is a little too clean, but at the same time, this is a supercar for the uber rich, so it probably would be kept pretty clean. So, I suppose I can't really fault that too much. Some of the gubbins here on the hydraulic lift, that definitely feels a bit too clean, a bit too polished, but otherwise, yeah, the model is solid, the model is sound, it covers off all the features, the four-bladed prop that this version had. And again, as I said, powered by the Rotex 912 engine. So realistically, like, yeah, the model, I can't fault it. As I said, I was a bit surprised by it when I first looked at it, because I thought this can't possibly be real, but no, turns out that it very much is real. Now, probably the only sort of thing I have to say about the model, though, is that the front wheels, and again, I'm picking holes and stuff if I get to this point, but basically the front wheels sit slightly off the ground. I mean, it's a stupidly minor thing and you're probably never going to notice it, but yeah, again, I'm going to have to reach pretty deep to be able to get issues with the model and the color scheme for that one. So overall, yeah, not too bad. Does what it says in the tin. Looks like what it's supposed to look like. And yeah, that's the exterior model of this one. So obviously you can see some of the animations here. We've got the passenger cabin open. We've got the wing fold mechanism with wings currently folded. And we've got the engine case open. So what we're going to do is we're now going to jump into the driving cab cockpit, little from column A, little from column B, and we're going to get started and actually go through the tour of the cockpit and go for a test flight. All right, so here we are in the office cabin cockpit. I'm not sure. Anyway, all right, so let's have a look here. So this is a really interesting layout for me, and as I was saying in the earlier part of this video, when I first looked at this cockpit, I looked at it and went, this can't be, this can't be the real thing. But I did my research. I had a look, and no, it is a pretty faithful reproduction of the actual cockpit of the actual AeroMobile 3, as she was configured during her testing and when she was unveiled at various car shows. So it's an interesting layout. In some ways, it reminds me of the Icon A5, in the fact that it's a car style layout, but at the same time, this one has got a lot more common with a GA aircraft than it does with a car. There were a few things that surprised me, particularly, like, for example, the circuit breakers over here. I looked at this and went, that can't be right with all the switches and everything. But no, it actually is. That is how the aircraft car was actually laid out. So in that way, I have to say that it does what it says in the tin. Like, it is laid out correctly. Now, I look at this and go, maybe some of the texturing might be a little bit better, but overall, again, this is a supercar that is going to be kept factory clean, so by the owner. So yeah, it does what it says in the tin, and overall, I think it's not bad. So it's. I guess I'm just surprised by this add-on, and that's going to be a running theme throughout this. All right, so, all right, let's get on with actually doing checking out some of the systems. So as you can see from where we were having a look at the external view, we are currently in the drive mode, as we've got our mode selected here, drive or flight, and we've got a basic transmission here. Now, one of the things that was a bit surprising for me when I first jumped in here is I was expecting a handbrake, but we don't have a handbrake because the handbrake is essentially your gear shift indicator. You can either have drive, or park, or fly, and that's kind of it. And it won't go into fly mode unless you've got the fly mode selected. So yeah, it's kind of interesting the way it's done and the way it's laid out. Now, I don't have a lot of information. I couldn't find a lot of footage of it in its drive mode, so I couldn't be sure of that one. But it works for me, and it explains not having a parking brake, because I'm used to having either a parking brake there on a car, or something, a lever or something, or a switch to pull here on the console to be able to set a parking brake. But that is a perfectly acceptable solution to that. So there you go. Anyway, all right. So what we're going to do is first off, we're going to transform the aircraft into our flight mode, and then I'm going to show off one of the things that I think is kind of cool about this add-on. All right. So let's transition firstly to flight mode. So and extend our wings. So first things first, we need to turn our battery on. So we've got our 24 volts in our battery there. We're going to change our mode selector into flight mode. And then we're going to set our wing fold. So we need to do it here. So we're going to opening. And we can see on our animation there that the wings are folding. And if we lean out, we can see that, yes, the wings are now folded into position. What we'll do is we'll quickly jump outside and have a look at that. So we can see that now our wings are fully extended. We've got that setup of the Rotax engine on display in here with the engine cover there. Now, I will close that momentarily because obviously this compartment is closed during flight. But if you did, now obviously I had it open just to showcase this as part of this review video, and I'll close that from the inside from the EFB very, very shortly because obviously you don't want to be flying with a giant air brake open all the time. It kind of works against things. But again, it just gives us another chance to be able to see the engine here. Again, small thing, I just feel the engine's a little too clean. That's probably the only thing I'm going to say about that. The engine just feels a little too clean, but some nice paint scuffing throughout the rest of it. So otherwise looking good. All right, let's just jump back into the cockpit. All right, back in here now. Let's close that cabin there. We can see that there it is. It is now fully closed. All right, so we're in flight configuration now. We're going to set our chocks into place on the wheels there. Now we're going to close the canopy. I'm going to close the canopy before we do the next feature that we're going to do. What I am just going to do, I am just going to power off the master battery. You don't want to be draining battery power at the moment for the next part. So, next part, one of the cool things that I like about this add-on is this fueling system that it's got. So you can use the normal weight and balance systems of Microsoft Flight Simulator if you wish so desire. But if you want to actually fuel your aircraft or defuel your aircraft, then what you can do is you can do this. So what we do is we'll click our button here and hey presto, surprise, we have a fuel truck here. Now let's talk about fueling our craft. Now, what I've done here is I've actually deliberately set our fuel in our wings. So this aircraft has wet wings. So the fuel tanks are in both the left and the right wings, as well as a reserve tank in the body of the craft as well, which is our center fuel tank gauge there. So I've left these two tanks empty. So we're going to go over now to our weight screen on our EFB. And we've got that here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our right tank. Okay, now what that does is that now actually connects the fuel hose to the wing. And if we jump outside for a second, we can see that the fuel truck has actually connected the hose to the actual tank that it's about to fill. It's a nice thing. Like I do like the fact that they did that. It's a small thing. I know it's not big and it's not mind blowing and stuff, but it's a nice little attention to detail that I really respect the developer for. And if you change the tanks between when you change it over to the left wing, when you change it over to the center tank, the hose will change position, which we'll see in a moment as well. So let's just jump back in and do our fueling process. Now, when I clicked on the tank, you notice the camera jumped a bit. Now, according to the developer's video, there's supposed to be a camera view, which is supposed to basically center your camera over the fueling controls over there on the truck. Now, for whatever reason, that doesn't seem to work for me. I'm not 100% sure why. It could be to do with the fact that I'm using Track IR. It could be a bug. I don't know. But the fact that I can still see it through here once the canopy is closed means that this is still usable and everything is fine. All right. So now that we've got our fuel hose connected to our right tank, we're going to fill that one up first. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over and we're going to have a look at our fuel system over here. So first thing we need to do is we need to turn the power on the fueling truck. We need to set the pumps on. We need to set the fuel injector on, and we need to open up the fuel tank, which is something that I've forgotten to do in the past. And come on. Here we go. And if we now zoom in here, we now click Start. Oh, wait, that's got defueling on. Let me switch. There we go. Okay, if that red light's on, that's bad because that's defueling. So what we want to do is we want to make to fueling, and let's try that again. So we click start, and we can see the number going up there. So the fuel is being pumped from our tanker into our aircraft. And if we have a look over on the tank level here, we can actually see the fuel in the tank going up. Now, again, as I said, this is a small thing, but I really like the fact that the developer has actually added this in for us to do. It's something that's kind of cool and kind of awesome, and something that I really appreciate. While that's fueling, something else that you might have noticed as well is that the power of this tablet, it has its own battery, which is independent and is starting to go down. So if you're ever worried about that battery going down, you can actually click here and actually connect the USB charging cable to the tablet, so it actually charges off the battery of the aircraft. So that's kind of cool. Again, nice little thing to do. All right, so we've got our full tank there, so we'll click finish on that. What we'll do now is we'll now change over to our left tank, and that little weird camera thing again, but that's okay. And if we look out, we can see, yep, there's the hose connected to our left tank, and we're going to click start on the fuel, and we can have the fuel going up. All right, so let's let that tank fuel up. Now, while that tank is fueling up, let's go through another couple of settings of the tablet here. So we've always gone through the ground icon. Now the navigation one, essentially it's a top-down view of the map, which allows you to, which centers on the aircraft. You've also got a airport selected there. You can type in the airport and you can actually search that one there. And then in the settings tab, it allows you to do, the brightness of the tablet. You can make the tablet less bright. If I can grab a hold of the thing there we go, so that works. And then you can change the license plate. So it comes with some default license plates. You've got a generic one advertising the developer, you've got a European style license plate, you've got one for Dubai and one for Israel. The only thing that I thought about this that would have been nice would be nice if this license plate was dynamic based on the registration that you put into the sim. It's an absolute nice to have. It absolutely doesn't have to be a thing, but it would be kind of cool if that would be possible. As it's a small thing, I'm not really worried about it, but it would be nice to have. Anyway, all right, so that's our fuel is full. So let's stop the fueling process. Done. We turn off our fuel injector, turn off the pump, turn off the power, and we close the fuel valve on the truck. All right, there we go. And that is our fueling demonstration complete. And then we'll disconnect the fuel line. There we go. And then we can make the fuel truck go away. There it is. And we've dismissed the fuel truck. So it's a nice, I know it's kind of gimmicky, but at the same time, I really kind of like it. So that is pretty awesome. All right. Now that we've gone through the basics of that kind of stuff, let's go through and start the aircraft. Now, I'm going to go back here, and this is going to be something I'm going to talk about as one of my bugbears for this add-on. So one of my bugbears of this add-on relates to something that I've talked about on several times with various different add-on aircraft over the last few years. It's the use of the interactive checklist in the sim. Now, for me, checklists are stupidly important because for those of us who fly in real life, they are absolutely, these are our Bibles. Like, this is what we use all the time. In a sim context, they are great for a couple of reasons. For the first reason, for those who want to really truly role play being a pilot, then having these checklists accessible is super important because this enhances your immersion. But on the other hand, if you're a new virtual aviator or if you're not familiar with the aircraft, then these checklists really help you get to know the aircraft and get to know the aircraft, get to actually, get to understand what it's about and how things work. One of the great features that this sim has as well is an evaluation system where you can actually, essentially, your co-pilot talks you through it. So you make sure that you do what you're supposed to do, and it checks and verifies that they actually that you've actually done what you've been required to do before moving on to the next step of the checklist, making sure you don't stuff something up. Now, this checklist is generally is okay, but there's some bugs with it. So, for example, and it's probably more in the later ones. So, like for example, here, fuel pump, left hand, right hand fuel pump. So there is only a single fuel pump in this aircraft. There's not two fuel pumps. That would be for a twin engine aircraft. For a couple of other things, there are things like alternators. Check both on. There is only a single alternator, and that unfortunately does break the evaluation component because it's waiting for you to flick the second one, which you actually physically can't flick because it doesn't exist. So that can cause some hang-ups on the evaluation protocol, and unfortunately leads to some negative learning for new virtual aviators who may not be familiar with GA aircraft to be able to sort of just do it. The other thing where it's obvious as well is in the starting engine sequence, where you've got the engine glow. This looks like it's been lifted directly from the DA42, the Diamond DA62, because it's like it's engine glow. We don't have an engine glow icon here. We don't have a second engine. We've got a single engine here. So that's something that is it absolutely shattering? No. For anyone who's familiar with GA aircraft, it won't be a problem for you because most of this process is pretty stock standard. So it's not going to affect you too much. But for new virtual aviators, it is going to be a bit of a problem. So that is something, and especially for, as I said, we need to make sure that we are, the add-ons are available are accessible to all levels of virtual aviators. So is it breaking? No. Does it need to be cleaned up? Absolutely. So I, sadly, unfortunately, will not be using the checklist during this start. I much prefer to use checklists, the provider checklist during this. But yeah, this is something that, unfortunately, does absolutely need to be fixed. So there you go. Anyway, as I said, it's a bugbear that I've got. But fortunately, I would like to think that I'm familiar enough with GA aircraft that this should not be a problem. So speaking of which, let's get this set. All right, so we are currently in park. That's good. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start our process, cold and dark start. So we're going to do battery master is on. All right, and we're going to put set our fuel to left tank to get us started. That's something else to note as well, is that there is no fuel crossfeed. You do have to manually change the fuel throughout the flight. So just keep an eye on your fuel gauges here and try to keep them in some form of balance. All right, let's put our fuel pump on, powering up. All right, that is good. We're going to check, put our position and our strobe lights on prior to start. Confirm wings extended and green indicators showing locked. All right, so we're going to crack the throttle slightly. There we go. All right, and we're going to move magnetos to the start position. RPM is rising. Fuel flow there. We are good to go. Okay, fuel pump off. Pitot heat on. Alternator is on. And we can see straight away that we've got our indicator there of the battery there going straight at 28 volts, so we know the alternator is working. And avionics master is on. So as I was saying before, like we've got two sets of G3X, Gamma G3X systems in here. We also have our transponder, and we've got a basic autopilot up here for us available as well. So you can program a GPS flight plan and use that. Couple of things to go through here with the controls as well. So we've got sort of steering wheel control, but it does have a yoke in the center as well to be able to do our turns. Okay, rudder pedal is good. Thanks very much for that, Garmin. And with that, we are looking like we are pretty much ready to taxi. So with that, let's tell our ground crew to remove the chocks, and we'll move into flight mode. Dropping into flight mode, and let's advance the throttle slightly. And we are moving. A very helpful Microsoft Flight Simulator taxiway coming on there. So in terms of, handling on the ground, it handles. I can't really say how it handles with the car. My experiences with cars in Microsoft Flight Simulator has been rather diverse, but it handles essentially much like a GA. I feel it's perhaps a little on the fast side. So here, like my throttle is full idle here at the moment, and yet I'm moving along at what I would consider to be a fairly reasonable rate of knots. In fact, I would say that this is a little too quick, so that's something that I know there's some discussion in the community about whether that's to do with Microsoft Flight Simulator physics or whether that's to do with the individual add-on aircraft, but it does seem a little fast on the taxi. But there we go. So let's have a look as we taxi along. As I said, it definitely feels like the taxiing is a little on the fast side. Like, not hugely amount, but it really does feel that way. Alright, so we come here at the end. So here at the end of our taxi, let's line up onto our grass strip. Try not to take out the sign with our wings. Alright, let's do our pre-takeoff check. So we've got our flaps set to takeoff position. I'll just cycle them all the way. So it's landing, back up to takeoff. Set. Alright. Barometric pressure looks good. Change over to our navigation screen. Alright, and we put our landing lights on. Ready for our departure. Alright, so let's get into now. Before I go, let's set a couple of things here. We'll quickly set our altitude, well, our cruise altitude. So we're going to cruise at 2,000 feet. Okay, good, and let's set our heading to a 090 heading. Just something that I can use once I am in the air. We can have a look at this aircraft while it is in the air. Go. Okay. Do a heading hold. Alright, so deactivate that. Okay, we are good to go. Alright, with that, I think pitot heat, so check pitot heat on, avionics bus master is on, alternator is good, battery is checked, wings are locked into flight position, fuel flow is good, RPMs are good. Alright, let's start our takeoff roll and see how she goes in the air. Alright, throttling up. It's kind of a bit weird because, you know, you have essentially like a car's steering as well as the rudders as well, so which is kind of a bit strange. Oh. So it feels a bit sluggish to, like, it feels like a bit difficult to take off at times, and I think that was definitely a little bit hard on the takeoff there. I've definitely got to get more comfortable, and it's taken me, this is about my 5th or 6th takeoff, and it is very variable at the moment with the takeoffs. It seems to be a bit brutal with that at times. But still, once it's in the air, it is exceedingly docile. And exceedingly steady. One thing perhaps that I did notice was that the trim tab is in some ways almost too effective, and it can take quite a bit of fine tuning with the trimming to be able to get that right. but that is definitely something to get used to. Alright, so lighting is good. Okay. Gentle left circuit around the airfield here. Now, the airfield that we've actually just taken off from Lima Zulu November, India, is actually a Niski airport in Slovakia. Is actually the home of this actual company and the actual project, and actually the airport that was the home of all the flight testing that was done for the AeroMobile 3. And it is kind of cool to actually, take off from the strip that actually, gave birth to this. Part of me wants to say abomination, but the other part of me was to say that, this is a bit of a technological marvel. Like, it is really, really cool to actually see, something that, that I grew up watching Jetsons and stuff like that, seeing it actually come into a reality that is a genuine reality now, and it doesn't involve, too many spacey things. It's just simply, it just is, and that is really kind of cool. Now, the trim system, just as I was saying before, is a bit interesting. So you're trimming, so it trims in all three axes, so both elevator, aileron, and rudder trim, and the trim is all actually all controlled from this little panel over on here on the passenger seat side. So you do have, and it's just simple clicks used for each of these. But overall, as I said, it is a very, very docile and stable aircraft for being able to do some scenic flights wherever you may want to go in the world, and then you can find somewhere that's kind of cool, and then explore the world from a ground level. So now that we're in the air, let's set the autopilot and let's have a look at this one. So let's have a look here. Let's go to. All right, so we're going to do. Let's go vertical speed, hold, heading holds. We're going to go AP on. And we're going to set vertical speed 500 feet per minute. As I said, the autopilot system is fully functional and operational. It is a basic autopilot. It does, because it has the G3000 or G3X unit in there, you will be able to program in a GPS route, and because it does support full nav radio systems, you will be able to use VORs as well. So there is quite a few options for you if you're wanting to do instrument flying with this. Whether it's really supposed to do that or not in real life is a whole nother conversation, but for the purposes of sim, it is absolutely possible. Now again, just having a look over here, we can see our fuel, our left wing tank starting to trick down, so I'm going to quickly switch that over to the right tank, so we can start draining that and a bit more efficiently. In the meantime, let's go and have a look at the outside of this aircraft while it is flying. So the AeroMobile, it looks even weirder. I'm not gonna lie, it looks even weirder in the sky than it does on the ground, but in a cool, interesting kind of way. Like, it's a fascinating piece of technology, and I really have to hand it to LivToAir that I feel like they've actually captured this marvel of engineering in a pretty decent way. And I am absolutely going to be the first to admit that I did not expect a lot from this. I was ready to absolutely slate this. I was ready to just absolutely, destroy this. But at the same time, I'm having a stupid amount of fun with it. And I'm genuinely really quite impressed by it. So, yeah, it does what it says on the tin. Once we get up to altitude, we'll do a couple of maneuvers to see how aerobatic it is and how maneuverable it is. But yeah, I mean, I've got to admit that this is a fascinating and a quite well done take on an amazing piece of, current or near future tech. So, and again, like, the performance seems to sit around about what the advertised specs were for the AeroMobile 3. It's interesting, in the manual LivToAir say that the development has stopped on it, and that's partially true. Since the loss of the test airframe, they have stopped production. They have stopped work on the AeroMobile 3. But what instead they've done, they're working on the next generation, the AeroMobile 4, which will be the next craft that they are creating, releasing, and they are planning it for the first units to be purchasable, or you can buy it now. But the first ones that will be on the roads and in the skies in the next couple of years. So it's closer than we think. And I feel that they've captured a lot of the aerodynamic things and challenges of this in a pretty good way. Oh, stall warning, we don't want that. Okay, apparently I didn't capture my altitude. Okay. Apparently, vertical speed hold didn't go so well as that one. Okay, so that's probably more. I'm going to totally blame that one on an operator error rather than the coding, because this is the default logic, and I forgot that I needed to have done alt then vertical speed for that one. So anyway, so let's reset our altitude for. Actually, you know what? Let's do 3,000 feet. Actually. 3,000 feet. 3,000 feet. Vertical speed. Go back down to that. Right, okay, that's better. So they've captured some of the aerodynamic features of it. You know, the actual sort of, the wings being buffeted by, you are affected by thermals quite a bit and over country. And as the aircraft gets close to its speed limit, like, you do get quite significant buffeting here, as you can see at the moment. So it is. I feel that the flight model, again, having not flown this myself, I can't really comment too much, but at the same time, it feels right, and that's, a lot of the time, that is actually more important, is that, does it feel right? If it's, is it 100% by the pilot's operating handbook or not? You will never get something 100% by the book in a sim. It's just flat out you want, whether you've got a $50 at home flight simulator like MSFS, or whether you've got a multi-million dollar professional flight sim. They are never ever 100%, like, straight up. Sorry, they're not. And if you think they are, then you need to go and check out the real sims again. So it gives you, but it feels right, and that's something that I never thought I'd hear myself say around, talking about a flying car. Like, I never thought I'd hear myself saying that. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the autopilot now, and we're going to go through a couple of moves. So let's do we're going to do a steep turn to start with. Check that out. Okay, so let's do steep turn. Very solid in the steep turn. Able to hold the angle of bank and altitude. Bit of back pressure on the stick. And rollout is surprisingly snappy with that rollout. Like, that was surprisingly snappy. I thought I'd left that too late, but I only missed 270 by 2 degrees. So pretty happy with that rollout with the steep turning capabilities. Now, in terms of aerobatics, we're not very fast, and we're only 3,000 feet, so we may not do aerobatics very well, but just because it's a test flight, let's try it. Okay, we can do a roll. We lose quite a bit of altitude, but we can roll inverted. Inverted flight, though, does not feel like that would be a very good thing to do at all. So steep turns and the conventional maneuvers that you would find with a GA aeroplane, absolutely fine. If you're getting to more aerobatics, that might be more of a problem for you, I think. So, and again, that feeds into what I was saying before about how the aircraft feels right. Is it, you know, is it spot on? I don't know. I haven't actually flown in a flying car myself. So it has to go on feel, and quite frankly, the feel is surprisingly good. And I have to give hats off to this one. This is, as I said, this is surprisingly fun. Like, it genuinely is surprisingly fun. So the interesting thing will be, how do we handle for a setup and landing? So let's go, we'll head back to our starting airfield of Nitka here. Let's go back and land and see what it's like in the pattern and coming into land. Alright, now we're just flying crosswind, turning onto our upwind. Probably the one thing that the visibility in some ways in this is probably the limitation of the visibility of a car that's got wings, is that you don't have a lot of downward visibility from the pilot's seat, and that is a little bit of a challenge and something that is definitely, I'm not going to say disrupting my workflow, but it's something that I would have to get used to flying this more often. But it's something that I can definitely compensate for. Okay, alright, let's fly crosswind. Whoa. Yep, and don't turn too hard or you will bleed off a lot of airspeed. So keep your movements controlled and relatively calm, and you'll be fine. But if you move the stick violently, you will bleed off a lot of airspeed very, very quickly. So be mindful of that stall horn. And I find, as I was saying, alluded to at the start there, I find myself working the trim a lot in this aircraft. I really do. I find, as I said, the trim's very, very responsive. Good trim range of movement in it as well, but I do find myself constantly on the trim when I am flying, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is something that might catch some new aviators if you're not aware of it. I also recommend turning off that AI trim nonsense as well, because that AI trim nonsense, as long as you've got the ability and the keybinds to be able to do trimming, yeah, do it. Don't just turn off the AI trimming nonsense. Okay. So watch that throttle, watch that speed. Picked up a bit of speed, and I picked up a bit too much height in that base turn. Sorry, in that crosswind turn. It'll be interesting judging my approach is going to be interesting, because this is a aircraft whose center of gravity is a lot lower than what I'm used to. Okay, he's off the power. Okay, my flap limitation's 108 knots. Okay, so 1 knot's flat. First notch flaps as we turn onto our base leg. Carefully monitoring that speed. Now I don't have to worry about dropping gear, because our gear is fixed. Turning onto final. Landing flaps set. Keep an eye on that speed. That flaps really those flaps take a lot of airspeed away. So I'm having to use quite a bit of throttle to be able to keep my airspeed where I want it to be. You've got to come in at and the flare is a lot harder with this one because it's a pusher prop. You don't want to flare too much because you'll damage the prop. So you've got to come in and land almost all wheels at the same time. Come in low of the fence. This is actually where a GPWS call out would be very, very useful. Okay, and cut the throttles. And down. And that, as it like, yeah, as long as speed, you have to really, really watch the speed on this. Like, you really, really have to watch the speed. But she's surprisingly docile to fly. It reminds me of a lot of training type aircraft. But in some ways, it's reflected in its design. It's got a high wing, fairly large wing area. So I would expect it to be relatively docile in its performance, which is kind of cool. All right, so let's taxi back to the ramp. But then before we stop and give our final thoughts like we normally do, we're going to transform it. We're going to go take it out for a spin on the roads of the city nearby and see what that's like. I think that might be a good idea. So let's get onto the ramp here and let's transform our aircraft. Okay. So what we're going to do is that we're going to put us into park. Okay, into park. We're going to change into drive mode. Oh. Now, hang on. What have I forgotten? Let's have a look here. Okay, I'm in park, or do I need to be in drive? Might need to be in drive. There we are. I'm in drive mode. My wings are folding. And back into place. Okay, so we are set. Now, I suppose that's the other thing is that the giant prop still turning at the back while driving. Well, actually, no, the prop shouldn't be actually turning anymore. Let's go check to make sure it's not. And it's not. So, yeah. And that's the thing is, when you switch to... That's why I couldn't turn it when it was in park. I had to turn it to drive mode, because when you turn to drive mode, it actually stops the prop, disengages the clutch, and it stops the prop with essentially a rotor brake onto the prop that actually locks it in position so that the wings can fold safely and park them up, so you don't, schmuck some poor pedestrian while you're actually driving around town. All right, so now that we've done that, let's now put ourselves into... So we are in drive mode. All right, I'm going to turn us around into center fuel tanks. We shouldn't need as much fuel on there. Navigation. See, whenever it'd be nice if you could do like a drive, have like a drive one on there. All right, let's now try. Let's turn. Okay. Lights off. Actually, I wonder if the landing lights also double as headlights. I wonder if that's what they double as. Yes, landing lights double as headlights. Nice! Again, I know it's a small thing. It's kind of obvious, but at the same time, nice to actually get the validation there. Alright, so let's do that. Alright, let's start for a drive. Now, can I get out of here easily? We may have to drive through a fence. So once you're on the ground, obviously you navigate with rudder pedals. You sort of steer the vehicle with your rudder pedals, and you can see that the steering wheel is now engaged rather than the yoke, which is kind of cool. So the fact as well that the animations actually change as well based on what mode you're in, again, shows quite a bit of attention to detail from the developer. And I'm again, like I'm genuinely. I suppose this is going to become a bit of a thoughts part of this video. Is that genuinely I was prepared to not. Okay, apparently something terrain in Microsoft Flight Simulator. 1 second. Anyway, so right, back to the driving now. So yeah, I guess it's one of the things, one of the side things about being, driving in a flight sim is that sometimes the driving can be a little rough, but at the same time, like this is a really. I really wanted to dislike this add-on. I genuinely really wanted to dislike this add-on. It felt like such a gimmick. It felt like something that was just not appropriate, and yet pretty much I have absolutely fallen in love with this add-on. I genuinely have. Like this add-on is just so much fun. It's so crazy, and it's probably even more crazy because it's real. Like this isn't some, plan or something that is a pipe dream of some venture capitalist. No, this is a genuine flying car that has actually flown. Now, sadly, during this particular one, the AeroMobile 3, was actually lost during one of its test flights, where the test pilot, there was an emergency situation. The test pilot had to pull the ballistic parachute, and the pilot walked away. The pilot walked away safely. You can read all about it on the Wikipedia page. Pilot walked away from the accident, but the frame and the aircraft flying car was damaged extensively through the landing after pulling the ballistic parachute, but it proves that it is still safe. So hence why they stopped with the 3, they're moving on to the 4 now. But this is just a stupidly fun way of seeing a different side of our flight simulator. And as I said, like I genuinely wanted to dislike this add-on, but I've just had so much fun with it and finding all the cool things the developers doing. I think that maybe it's a slightly overpriced. It's 20 something US dollars, 25 US dollars. So I think it might be a little on the expensive side, but at the same time, this is still a really, really fun add-on. And has it got a few issues? I don't have an indicator. I just realized I don't have any way to put an indicator on while I'm driving. But anyway, oh dear. Let's go for it. One moment. Apparently, watch out for those glitches in Microsoft Flight Simulator terrain. Anyway, this is, as I said, it's a couple of small things. Like, I want to see an improvement on the checklists need to be improved. Absolutely, that needs to be fixed and resolved. But overall, the art's pretty nice. The flight model, it feels like it feels like a flying car, like what I imagine a flying car would actually be like. So I can't really fault it too much. I do think it's perhaps a little bit overpriced. I think maybe if this was $15, I think this would maybe it would be even better value. But still, even at 20 something, it's not bad. And if this is something that you want to give a go, then you really could do far worse. You could genuinely do far worse than this little car. You really could. So I can't knock it. I just think it's a bucket ton of fun. And yeah, that's basically what I'm going to say about it, is that if you want something different for your flight simulation experience, and you want something that'll allow you to, with the occasional judicious use of slew mode when you find some terrain bugs, is going to let you explore the world, the huge world of Microsoft Flight Simulator from a very, very different angle, then this is something that you really may want to actually consider getting. maybe the ground steering could be a bit more in drive mode. The ground steering could be a bit more open, a bit more less stiff. That's probably a small thing that I'd like to see improved if the ground steering could be that. But again, remember, this is a flight simulator, not a car driving simulator, and yet with this add-on you kind of get the best of both worlds. All right, let me find somewhere to park my supercar, and we'll wrap this video up. All right, so final thoughts on the AeroMobile 3 from LivToAir. As I've said several times during this video, I wanted to dislike this add-on. I genuinely did. I thought this was a gimmick. I thought this was a silly idea. I thought this was going to be an absolute terrible implementation, even if it was a good idea. And I have absolutely been proven wrong. 100%, I have totally been proven wrong. This thing is a insane amount of fun. Will this become my daily flyer? No, it won't. But it is going to be something that is going to be a bucket ton of fun for doing something very different. If I want to experience something different for a day, and for those of you who've been following me for a while, you know that I love weird and wonderful, and this absolutely fits into the category of weird and wonderful. Overall, I think that this is a great model. The 3D model is great. The art is overall pretty good. The only bugs and issues that I genuinely have with it are fairly minor. As I said, mostly around the implementation of the checklist system, which is something that, to be quite honest, is an ongoing issue with a lot of devs throughout this sim, and at least LivToAir has actually put in a decent effort for the most part for theirs, and they've got it 90% of the way there. So yeah, I'll give credit where credit's due. It just needs that little bit of 10% of extra polish to get it across the line. The addition of the fuel truck and the interactive fuel system is a pretty cool feature as well, and something that I think is really well done and a great thing to look at. So overall, I think this is really well done. Is it going to be everybody's cup of tea? Absolutely not. But it is something that if you like weird and wonderful, or if you want to look at exploring the world of Microsoft Flight Simulator from a different perspective, then definitely give this a consideration. Because I think you could definitely do worse than this in our sim at the moment with a variety of add-ons, and overall it looks better than a lot of the other stuff out there. So yeah, I've got to say hats off to LivToAir for a job well done. I think that you've got a great start here, and I think that with a tiny little bit more work, I think this is going to be a super amazing and fun add-on. As I said, it's not going to be for everybody, but yeah, if you want to do weird, wonderful, and different, or live the potential, take a moment to live the life of someone who has the money to throw around for supercars, then hey, you can't really go wrong with this, I don't think. So as we wrap up that video, so that does wrap up this video. Thank you very much for watching. I do want to say a huge shout out and a huge thank you to the team at LivToAir for providing me with the review copy of this add-on today. This one is available at Sim Market and flysim.to, available if you do want to pick this one up and add this one to your collection. I do want to say once again, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, as always, to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed these videos and want to see more. And of course, as always, you can catch up with me and all the things I'm up to between videos by finding me on Facebook and on Twitter and on Twitch. Just search NovaWing24. Alright folks, thanks very much for watching. Take care, safe skies to all, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.